Welcome to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. It is very ironical that the president was standing in a ground in Homa Bay, blaming the judiciary and parliament on corruption cover-up, while the executive itself captured parliament and overran it when William Ruto wanted to change his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, to impeach his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. At the same time, the president's handlers have played key role in cover-up, creating cover-up chambers and echoes on runaway corruption and plunder of country's resources. At the time that powerful individuals who are directly linked and who orchestrate murder of innocent Kenyans in this country get state protection. But I think the president lacks the moral ground to lecture his own system for abetting all this. In this podcast, we stand to confront the president's position that parliament and the courts are the weakest link in the fight against corruption, and will demonstrate to you how what happened in parliament immediately after the president's statement is a clear indicator that the fight against corruption and schemes of shielding those who actually hurt the country is thriving under state protection. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our videos, and thank you very much for supporting this podcast. We do this each and every day because of your support. Subscription is absolutely free, and the advantage here is when you subscribe to a channel, whenever we publish our videos, you'll be getting notifications, and so you will not miss our well-analyzed videos. As I always say, here in this podcast, we have a diverse, of course, we give it a deep perspective. We do our research so that by the time we appear in the screen, we have something concrete just for you. So subscribe. William Ruto opened devolution conference in Homa Bay. And during that event, he's saying how parliament is abetting corruption by soliciting bribes from the executive whenever the members of the executive and governors appear before them for grilling.
While I agree with the sentiments expressed by the Speaker of the Senate, and he has made a solid statement on holding governors and county governments to account, I also must say the legislature must also be held to account. Because there is something going on in our legislature that we must call out. There is money being demanded from the executive, from governors, from ministers, from people in the executive, especially those who go for accountability before our houses of parliament. Mr. Speaker.
It's true. No, yes, it's absolutely true. But isn't this also an admission that executive demands favors from parliament? We have an example at hand. When William Ruto wanted to impeach Rigathi Gachagua, it took a record 48 hours for an impeachment motion to be discussed, the voting to be done, and the deputy to be gazetted. And, you know, there is the way, and stories are all over about how the president's interest in parliament thrived on handsome bribes that members of parliament received. So I think he lacks the moral ground to lecture system that he leads on receiving on extortion, while himself, as the head of the executive, when they wanted to impeach the deputy, they actually used the same route. And of course, it's an admission that indeed there was money that exchanged hands for the MPs to pass the impeachment motion against Rigathi Gachagua. Isn't this a clear admission? Parliament is captured. I want to say this. William Ruto is blaming the executive, the parliament, which parliament has been weakened. For example, when you have opposition that Azimio la Umoja within the ODM and affiliate parties as the opposition, who are now, put together under some gentleman agreements known as broad-based government, and the opposition is supposed to put government on check. Isn't this already a compromise of an institution that is supposed to oversight the executive? How? You've already created the compromise. So the blames and the complaints is actually gaslighting the public. DIG Lagat never interrogated. Do you know that Murkomen, the interior CS, immediately president complained about it? Let us just look at what happened in parliament. Murkomen went to parliament and made two things. He said that the story of child trafficking that was done by BBC in Maimahiu was cook and fake, and in fact they were looking for the journalist who did that story so that they could arrest the journalists.
We are confirming from this report that, Mr. Speaker, the entire report was fake because the people who were interviewed were not underage. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I went the whole length to read their names, their pseudonyms, Mr. Speaker, and who they are, what they do, and why, what was the motivating factor when they were posing as children. Mr. Speaker, that is not, and the statement also is very clear. That is not to say there may be no cases of sexual exploitation of young people in the country. And Mr. Speaker, the security agencies, including the anti-trafficking unit, have done tremendous work since the days of Gilbert Dare, Mr. Speaker, among others, to make sure that these incidents are managed. But we still have cases of human trafficking, including those that come from neighboring countries passing through Kenya, or Mr. Speaker, young people that are being lured. They may be no underage, but being lured also for jobs abroad, and they suffer. And I answered questions in this chamber before relating especially young people from the northern part of the country. So that is not to say we are not grappling with issues of human trafficking, but as far as the BBC documentary is concerned, it was a hoax. It was, Mr. Speaker, planned, executed in a manner to portray that there were underage girls that were, going through sexual exploitation, while in reality the people who were playing the game knew that they were not. Now, on the part of BBC, insofar as media ethics is concerned, it remains at large there to know whether, the first question is, why would someone promise financial reward in case information is going to be shared? Was the financial reward intended to get a good story that can be aired by BBC and therefore improve the well-being of the reporter? Or was it also the financial reward was actually part of the tricks that were being used by BBC to see if they can find actual young children, Mr. Speaker? And that remains also to be unraveled through the investigations.
And this one, someone was listening. I listened to this story and I was a bit disappointed. if you look at the grounds on which the CS is discrediting that story, is that wale ambao walikuwa interviewed were not minors. Do you know in media law you are not supposed to interview children? Some of the children who are actually affected by victims of that child trafficking are minors who cannot even talk in cameras. Do you know even today, if something happens, something like that happens to a child, for example, a child who is defiled, and as a journalist, if you go to cover that story, do you go to interview the victim? Do you go to interview the victim? You interview the mother. The mother will face this direction, maybe carrying the child, or the child facing a different direction. Then the mother speaks on behalf of the child. So a docket that is led by a seasoned journalist like Francis Gashuri, the CS is going to Parliament to embarrass himself of discrediting the story based on the fact that he's talking about child trafficking. Those who are interviewed are adults. You fail to understand what exactly, even if you're defending, and of course this one is a case of defending an offense. What are they defending? You're not a perpetrator. The CS is not a perpetrator. Not even your relative probably is even a perpetrator, but you just have to defend it at all cost. I think that was a blunder, and it just shows how we are not serious as a country. And I want to show you how the Parliament is protecting the executive. He then made another statement that, remember the Quarry story? The guy who was blamed, who was being accused to be behind it, was arrested and taken to Gigiri police station, then disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And then months later, Murkomen was in Parliament telling MPs, members of public, to help police find someone who disappeared from police custody. Where does that happen? And when Wamuchomba confronted Murkomen, I would want you to look at the reaction of the speaker.
I refuse to sit in this house to listen to the cabinet secretary confirm that his ministry cannot be able to capture suspects who were previously under their arms and custody. I refuse to sit in this house, Mr. Speaker, to listen to that kind of an explanation.
You are already sitting in this house.
Yes, I'm refusing to listen to the answer he's giving. It is not right for the cabinet secretary to come to answer a question and tell us that the suspect disappeared and is not giving us hope. Which hope is he telling the people, the victims? What hope is he promising? Is he telling us that we are going to wait for the suspect to disappear forever? It has been 3 months since the suspect disappeared, Mr. Speaker. Those are families that are paining, grieving loved ones. We watch on television bodies being retrieved from Kware, this dump site, Mr. Speaker. The minister cannot come here and tell us that he wants members of public to help him identify suspect who was previously in their custody. As a woman leader, as a mother of girls, I refuse to take that kind of an answer from the cabinet secretary.
Thank you. It is total discourtesy. Go back and take your seat.
So the speaker is protecting Murkomen to spew lies in the floor of the house. And then the president somewhere in Homa Bay is blaming that, Parliament is, this is the real thing. It just happened after the president complained about it. Of course, what Murkomen was saying there, Murkomen was purely spewing lies. And of course, you need to get it out of that. Another outrageous one is this one on blaming judiciary.
I also want to ask the judiciary not to be a haven for the corrupt to hide behind judicial decisions. We have innovation that is only available in Kenya that allows a corrupt person or somebody who has stolen public resources or somebody in breach of law not to be prosecuted. Something called anticipatory bail. It is a Kenyan innovation that takes us backwards. Just let's ask ourselves, somebody who has stolen public funds and then goes to court and gets something called anticipatory bail, makes it impossible for such a person to be arrested and prosecuted endlessly. How does that support the fight against corruption? This is a matter I hope our friends in the judiciary would help us answer.
Okay, it is very true there is a problem at the judiciary, that the justice system is also captured and it's a weak link. But anticipatory bail, yes, it's there. I've always, personally, I think in this channel, I've always raised complaints with it that there's a corruption, that someone will go to court to stop its prosecution, his prosecution. Of course, you must also know that it was created there because there are people that use the judicial system, abuse the judicial system to settle political scores. However, if the president genuinely have a problem with that anticipatory bail, then yapping somewhere in Homa Bay, how does it help? I listened to his speech and it doesn't have an action. What is the call for action? As in, what is he initiating? Is he talking to parliament to initiate something? Or what's an amendment to it? So talking about it is acknowledging that yes, there is a problem. But as a president, you cannot talk like a blogger. You cannot talk like an analyst. You should only come with a tangible solution to it. And of course, I'm just using a very good example. We are in this country where one of the principal complainer against Albert Ojwang, Deji Lagat, went and announced to the country that he stepped aside. And investigation went on. He wrote some statement that no one ever saw what he wrote. And then after that, he was cleared, went back to office. And after going to office, he says he never stepped down. He went on a holiday. Look at how that, and since that happened, apart from saying William Ruto has given money to the Albert's family, he's never mentioned anything about that case. And there are several other people killed in such mysterious circumstances that go really without justice. So we are blaming judiciary in all this. But if you look at the real thing, you'll understand the president is actually abetting corruption. And people around him. A good example is the Hustler Fund and eCitizen. Auditor General, more than 3 times, has gone to Parliament and complained that, look here, this eCitizen, there is fraud going on here. Kuna pesa inatoka eCitizen inaenda to private accounts. The president has never mentioned about that. And eCitizen is being managed by people who are given contracts by government who work closely with Treasury. So if money is being stolen, it's stolen by people within the system. The president has never answered anything on corruption. He will speak about Hustler Fund, housing, he will speak about SHA, but will never condemn the issue of corruption within the system. Never. Never condemn corruption. The stories about ghost schools, schools that are not existing, but they're receiving capitation. He will never comment about it. When talking about school, he will talk about education funding model, I've given money for capitation, but will never talk about corruption. So the moment the president cannot talk about corruption, but will pick the corporate sweet words about the plan, we are lying to ourselves. I saw this one about Megascope Healthcare. It's another corruption I saw there.
You know, I genuinely believe that cartels in Kenya believe you and I are fools. They actually, I think they absolutely believe you and I are fools. And I'm going to give you an example. In 2015, there was a major medical scandal that involved a company called Megascope Healthcare, and they were cited for procurement irregularities for about 60 billion Kenya shillings. And Senate was so upset with this story because they demanded for asset recovery and prosecution. Now, fast forward all the way to 2025, and I read the papers and I see Megascope Healthcare is part of procurement list of about 7 companies, and they're about to receive a tender of about 200 billion shillings. The same Megascope Healthcare. Of course, there are other 6 companies in there, but Megascope Healthcare is there. And we do not know the share of these 200 billion shillings. There could be the majority company that's going to be awarded, because of course they already have 60 billion shillings, so they have the muscle to be able to actually bid for larger contracts. And I'm just wondering, we have an EACC, we have a procurement something committee, we have the DCI, we have so many bodies that could actually ensure that Megascope Healthcare never bids for any business in this country again, simply because of the scandal that they had 10 years ago. And
But I want to tell you why I strongly believe that Ruto is playing politics, PR with the corruption, and contrary to the perception is creating as disturbed about it, it's not true. Corruption funds politics. Corruption funds politics. I've listened to an MP saying an MP salary, the salary of an MP generally plus allowances, can to the maximum can go to probably around 900,000. If you calculate that in a year, that's around, that's around times 12, that's around like 10 million, maybe. Calculate, but for 5 years, that is 60 million. But MP will spend money and put up mansions worth millions. If you ask why, he will tell you we have tenders we normally get. Even if you get tenders, do you get tenders to enrich yourself? No. So corruption funds politics. The other way is this. Sometimes you are allowed to steal. For example, governors. After you are found stealing, they found in the coffers, then they use it to buy patronage. You know, like a governor, umepatikana umeiba. Alafu what they do, they tell you, now you end aside the president. If you don't, we are going to pursue that case. So your file is kept somewhere so that you get conducive environment. Now, with that kind of politics and someone who then tries to go against the president, his file will be pulled and EACC dispatched there early in the morning, arrest the governor, just try to bring him in court, bring this and that, and the story goes and disappears in thin air. When we still have those manners, we cannot fix corruption. We cannot fix this country. Parliament is under the influence of the executive. The other day, David Oching was complaining about bills. There's some bills that are taken, sponsored by MPs. Do you know if you sponsor a bill by MP, and if you're not in good terms with the president assents it to law. In fact, I don't know why we created, just as the way he's complaining about anticipatory bail, I'm also uncomfortable about the presidential assent to a bill. That until the president assents it, that's what makes it a law. I think we should remove that part from the president and take it to the Chief Justice. Because at least the Chief Justice will look at the legal interpretation. You know, you take it to the president, it is subjected to legal and political interpretation. And there are bills that are lying with the president and cannot be assented, probably because the sponsor of the bill is not in good terms with the president. And if such bill is passed, he's going to get credit for having done something. So David Oching was complaining about a bill. It was even passed in parliament, went to president, and it was not assented simply because president had some reservations, and it was only told 6 months later. So long as the executive still wants to control who is the budget committee chair, who is where, who is going to be impeached, then even this exercise of senators, of ministers appearing before parliament is very futile. Every injustice committed, Ruto throws money instead of justice. People were killed during Gen Z protests. Instead of talking about justice, Ruto is setting up a committee to look into how people are going to be compensated. Come on. The compensation should actually be awarded by the courts. The compensation should not be done from some corridor, some committee seated somewhere. The cases should be tried. Of course, them taken a little bit faster. Those found culpable. People offer damages by the courts. That's what happens. Then from there, that there will be justice and compensation will be an act of justice. Now, that happens, Ruto throws money. Albert Ojwang is killed under police custody. And instead of us talking about justice, Ruto throws in million. I'm building a house for the mother and this and that. So in everything, if we still throw in money, do we genuinely believe we can fight corruption if you're using money to water down such cases? Thank you.